Hi, this is Aluna Michaels, Esoteric Astrologer, and I'm here today to talk to you about Saturn transits. Transits are temporary energies from a planet that affect your chart for a period of time, giving you opportunities for growth of all sorts, and then they move on. An aspect is when it's permanent in your chart. When Saturn makes an angle to another planet in your chart, those are called aspects. And if you have Saturn stuff in your chart, all the time, you could look at my Capricorn video, maybe get something out of that. Hopefully you get something out of this too. But a transit is something that will happen to you for a temporary period of time. Saturn, generally, the transits last about 9 months and kind of move in 3 phases. And if you know anything about planets retrograding, like Mercury retrograde, that means from the point of view of the Earth, it looks like the planet stops and goes backwards and then stops and goes forward. So when Saturn does that, it will work with your planet one time, move forward, then it will turn retrograde, work with your planet a second time, and then a third time as it moves past completely, and that process takes about 9 months. Saturn itself has approximately a 30-year orbit. It's like 20 3/4 days or something like that, and it can be varied. So you tend to have a Saturn transit to a certain planet once every 7 years, roughly. But there's certain angles that are, planets that get affected. It's harder than others. And generally when the planet makes a square, when Saturn makes a square to your planet or an opposition to the planet, or sometimes even the conjunction, they tend to be the more challenging transits, whereas a trine, which is a 120-degree angle, or a sextile, a 60-degree angle, those tend to be easier. But I just want to talk in general about Saturn transits. Most of the people that are watching this probably are having bad Saturn transits, the squares, the oppositions, the conjunction, that are more challenging. I don't think anything's ever bad, but it can feel intense. And just a quick thing to say too, one thing wonderful I read, that when you're having a challenging aspect, like say you're having Saturn square your sun, or Saturn oppose your moon, when you go to an astrology book, read that. Read the Saturn opposed the moon, Saturn square the sun, but also read Saturn trine the sun, Saturn trine the moon, and see how it is when the planet works with you in a easier way. So you could use that with affirmations or try to understand what Saturn is trying to do for you. Saturn just doesn't want to make you miserable, although it can feel that way. In typical astrology, if someone says they're having a Saturn transit, you think, oh great, I'm going to be depressed, or I'm going to, be lonely, or I'm going to be sick or tired. And, sometimes those things are true, but basically because Saturn is trying to get you to slow down. And if it needs to make you depressed so you do less stuff, or, you get a bad cold that seems to not go away, you do less stuff. And the trick is not to get into the self-pity or the woe is me thing, which is real easy with Saturn, because Saturn also is trying to narrow your focus onto something it wants you to work on. So it can feel like, your world is closing in and getting very narrow, which can feel, we can ascribe negative things to that. But to think, okay, this is, thank you, universe, thank you, Saturn, you're helping me zero in on precisely that thing that needs adjusting in my life, forgiving, releasing. Saturn really wants you to be better than you already are. And, Saturn is the planet, Saturn is the last of the classical planets, the final planet we see with the naked eye. And then there's Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that follow. And Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are definitely intense, transpersonal, huge life-shifting planets, but Saturn really straddles that, and it's the beginning of those deep personal transformational planets. So it's getting you ready to be bigger, to be more, and to release what is dead, done, that's keeping you stuck. And a lot of times there are things that we feel comfortable in, so it's like, don't take this away, this is working, but you're outgrowing it. And anything Saturn seems to try to take away from you or is pulling out of your life, it's time to, let's say, upgrade that thing. That could be a relationship or the way you're in the relationship. It could be the way you take care of yourself. It could be patterns that you have from childhood that you're bringing into the workplace or a marriage, let's say, and you need to upgrade the way you interact. And you think, oh, this is just me. But Saturn says, no, this is a limited box, and we need to move you from this smaller box into a higher possibility. And the Olympics just finished. This is August 2012 as I do this, and I was watching the pole vaulting and the high jumping, and you know what they do, the athletes say it's at 7.5 feet, and then shoo, they go over that bar, and yay. And what do the Olympic people do next is they raise the bar. Like, yeah, you can jump 7.5 feet, but let's see if you can go, 7 feet and 10 inches. And they try to do that, and sometimes they knock the bar over, and it's like, okay, we'll try it again. But it isn't just, 7.5 feet that you arrived. You're always trying to raise the bar for yourself. Saturn, at least, is trying to raise the bar for you. And it can feel like, I've just gotten comfortable with my relationship. And then Saturn makes you go, you can make this better. And then you're going to go up higher. You're going to know that you can do more. So that's ultimately what Saturn is trying to get out of you. Is you're more than you think you are. But the way it does it kind of stinks sometimes, people think. And just to tell you too, this is the Saturn glyph. If you happen to see that in your chart or get something done where it tells you your transits, that's Saturn. Okay, now on to some other ideas here that I have. Okay, because, all esoteric astrology is trying to show you your karma, what your soul is trying to achieve in this life, what the universe is bringing you for opportunities for growth. But Saturn is the typical, planet of karma, especially about being able to, I don't want to say pass the test, but if you see Saturn as the end of the planets we see with the naked eye, then there's this huge space before the planet Uranus. Uranus is much more, it's like graduate school as far as planets go, and Saturn's like maybe being in college, or the other planets might be like high school. Saturn needs to test you to see, are you ready for this higher vibration and energy of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto? So there's always that sense of you are being, again, showing where you're strong, showing where you're weak, showing where you can improve. So it's protecting you from the more awesome stuff you can do with your life. You don't want to jump into it when you're not ready, So there's always that idea of karma, that you have to pay off old debts, that you have to complete pieces that you're not quite done with. And so that's where Saturn can be that tough taskmaster of like, this issue's coming back, or damn it, this happens to me over and over again. It's like being able, instead of to fight it, to say, okay, Saturn, what do I need to learn karmically here? What is from a past life? If there's something that's come up, you see, I always get treated bad in relationships, but I've always been a sweet person. Well, maybe you need to look at, show me from a past life, or at least say, I accept that I was a jerk in a past life and I'm paying things back or something, and getting that balanced out, that Saturn's always trying to balance something. Or to say, okay, so that was my karma to have bad relationships up till this point in my life, even though I've been sweet as pie this lifetime. All right, now Saturn's bringing awareness, and you say, well, how do I look at my patterns from childhood that I was trained to attract people who were good for me, and break that pattern? Break that in you. So once Saturn also is about that forgiving and releasing process, forgiving yourself for past life mistakes that caused you to have 10 bad relationships, forgiving each of those people that you had the bad relationships with, releasing those situations, forgiving yourself for staying in them too long or whatever. This is what Saturn's trying to do, to say, okay, now we're ready to raise the bar. You're not quite ready. We don't want to raise it before you're ready, because you don't want you to hurt yourself, but we do want you to start trying for higher. So there's that where Saturn just says, what is it in me that keeps going in the same cycle? And to be able to forgive and release that, and to get a new cycle that is higher and better. So there's always that sense of paying that karma back, which can kind of stink. But so it's a balance between adjusting that karma, forgiving and releasing, and being ready and stronger for the next phase of your life, because Saturn is always going from phase to phase to phase. Okay, let's see. There's some things here to read to you. One of the things in soul evolution and spiritual evolutionist philosophy is that ultimately you want to start taking responsibility, conscious personal responsibility for your soul's growth, and not just be a victim to circumstance or just, oh, it's karma. It's like, well, it's karma, but how can I work with this? How can I forgive? How can I release? And Saturn does push you to take that personal responsibility. So you can be in the victim, or you can be in that taking the personal conscious responsibility, and you'll get a lot of guidance from Saturn as to where you can tweak, but just knowing that you're getting to be a conscious participant in all this stuff of your life and your soul growing. Okay, so when we see Saturn as bringing opportunity rather than just misery, that's a huge shift of consciousness. And again, hard to keep up for the whole 9 months sometimes when you're having Saturn if it's a rough time. But Saturn, and this is one great thing from the book Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey, that she says that Saturn offers the choice to destroy that which holds back the free expression of the soul. And that's the thing, that Saturn gives you the choice. You can be in the misery, but it's like we can work through that misery faster and say, oh, this is something that's holding me back, instead of, Saturn, why are you taking this from me? Why are you taking, you know, whatever, the relationship, whatever seems to be being released. You know, another way to help Saturn is to release things in your house, to look at, you know, denials and affirmations about releasing old parts of your thinking and bringing in new parts, but you always do that denial, the saying, no, I'm not accepting that lower form of thinking before you bring in the higher form, because Saturn is about pushing it out before it plants the new. But that's a real important piece too. So it's your choice to be able to move it faster. And also that Saturn is breaking up existing conditions. And again, it's trying to free you, trying to free you. And I have a friend that talks about the new normal. And ultimately, that's what Saturn wants to do. It's moving into a phase that feels uncomfortable now. But boy, it's going to be like, oh, wow, the better. This is more comfortable for me. I can't believe I lived in that small thinking or small box, you know? Let me see here. I had some other things that for some reason I'm not seeing right now. Completion of the karmic piece. Oh, I wanted to talk about this with the release process with Saturn. Is if you go on a website that a group I work with called the Center for Enlightenment, and the website is CF, like Center for, and then the word enlightenment.org. And Jane Elizabeth Hart has a CD, actually there's a few CDs on the 7 steps for successful life transitions. There's a workbook. There's also this book called The Spiritual Power Tools. Can you see that? That has the 7 steps in it. And that also is a way to free yourself of karmic pieces through doing some journaling and meditating, which is always good when you're having Saturn. I'm probably going to repeat a lot of this, of the releasing stuff, when we talk about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in other videos, because that's the name of the game, is move on, move up, right? So just to keep in mind with Saturn, you're always releasing the lesser for the greater. Even if you think this is the best thing in my life, it's going away. But this is the other piece with Saturn that's tricky, is it creates a vacuum. There's a point where, like we were talking about the denials, you're moving things out, you're weeding the garden, even, you know, trimming your hair so it grows in thicker. You weed the garden and it looks a little bit bare, but then more flowers come up. You know, you create the vacuum, and then it brings the space for more good to come into your life. But the creation of a vacuum is tricky, because then you're, what we say, in the void. You know, there's that point where you've either consciously let it go, or Saturn's ripped it away from you, and it's like, you know, you're left with that emptiness. And Saturn can feel very isolating, and it's important to have quiet time when you're having Saturn, to respect that divine vacuum and to honor it. But also there's that point where it gets, you know, you could feel cut off from people. And so it's a balance of being able to talk to people who understand spiritual process, or just to say hi to people, you know, and know that other people have gone through Saturn before you, or they've had loss, or they've had shifts. You know, we could even be talking about seemingly small things, but they'll feel intense. You know, if shifting of job, or you know, I mean, whatever kind of things. But or there's even a sense things are going along fine, but you feel internally off. You know, just feel disconnected. And remembering you're getting reconnected eventually, but being able to say, like, I'm feeling disconnected. If they know about Saturn, I'm having Saturn, or I'm in a void time if they know about spiritual growth. And that's natural. Just to know it's a natural part of the process, that the ebb, Saturn brings the ebb, but then also will eventually bring the flow. And if you can stick with that, it can help be a little more serene through the ebbing. But again, you don't want to be totally alone, and that's just, you need to have some sort of reaching out to others in a stable base while you're going through it. And you are completing karmic pieces. And I want to say that too, that I try to think of Saturn when it does bring things to a close as a celebration. It's like, just like graduating from high school or college, it's like, it's over, but wow, look what I've accomplished. And even if it's, let's say, a relationship, a lot of people tend to have relationship stuff with Saturn. If the relationship is breaking down and either needs to be a new person in your life or a new way of relating to that same person, that can show, let's say there was a difficult past life you were experiencing with that person, and it's come to a close. You've corrected it. It's ended maybe because you've done the karma. You've suffered with it. You've experienced it. And it's time now to move on to a higher expression within that relationship. You can, because someone, let's say you're married to, you have maybe 6 lifetimes with that person. And so, we completed this lifetime where we were warriors on opposing villages or something. And it feels like the marriage is going to end. Maybe it's just transitioning into new karma, which is actually great, where you were lovers who could never get together, and now you're together and you feel like you fall in love all over again with that person, and they're extra kind to you, and you have this dream relationship with them you thought you'd never have with them. So Saturn can say, okay, let's forgive and release what's happened before and get ready, because you've celebrate that you've ended that piece of karma and there's this new piece coming. And you are clear to accept what that is, because you've got resentments from the warrior lifetime with your spouse, and then you move into this, the lovers that never got together, now you're together, and you could miss out on all that joy because you're still from this other lifetime thing. So Saturn's always celebrating, yay, I finished that. Yes, it was hard work, and trusting that it's closing and opening to a new piece of karma. And again, it could be you need to leave a relationship and move on to the next one. That's the person with the unrequited or unable to connect love in the past life. Romeo and Juliet finally get to be together and not have trauma. It could be with another person. It might not be with that same person, but because you do the forgiveness work and the release work, you would know. Because Saturn also gives you reasoning power, and it can discern what is the next move. Do I leave the marriage, or do I allow the new piece to flow in by seeing it flowing in? Do I leave the job, or do I wait? Whatever kind of thing it is. So that's important, that with the pieces of karma. I might have raised more questions than I've answered on the video. Please feel free to comment on the YouTube or connect with me about the transits. And just remember, Saturn passes. And another thing to say too, while you're having a Saturn transit, more likely you're having other transits too. You're having fun Jupiter transits, or peppy Mars transits, and silly little Mercury transits, and the moon just bringing in good feelings. And know that it's not all hard work when you're having Saturn. Looking for those other bright spots too that are picking up your energy, and knowing that you're ready for this. You're ready for this step. You're ready to let go and move on. And again, you're that Olympic athlete that's trained and says, I could set a world record if they put the bar up. I could do more than my personal best. I can go further than anyone's gone. And to allow Saturn to bring that out of you, to bring that champion out in you. But we've got to, rout out all the fears and the whatevers, and I don't deserve it, and blah, blah. So that's what Saturn is, your friend, even though it's a tough coach. But he's a good guy overall. So hang in there for having those transits, and think loving thoughts to yourself and others as you go through them, and enjoy the success that's coming to you. Bye for now.